قل لو كان معه آلهة كما يقولون إذا لابتغوا إلى ذي العرش سبيلا سبحانه وتعالى عما يقولون علوا كبيرا.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Sharyar, and today's topic is going to be about Surah Kahf. So, Surah Kahf, Prophet Muhammad said that a person who memorizes the first 10 ayahs is protected from any fitna of this dunya. So, it is also said and mentioned that a person who recites Surah Kahf every Friday, there's going to be a light that shines on them from the first Friday up to the next Friday. This surah is very powerful. That it protects us from one of the greatest fitnas that's still yet to come, and that's Dajjal. So the surah is split up into two parts, and the first part is split up into four sections. So it goes serum, a story, serum, and a story. So the serums are groups of ayat, the complications of ayat, where they talk about a certain topic. So the first topic, or the first lesson that's being taught, is where there were a young group of guys who were in the city who were being threatened by the king. It's a famous story where the three boys run away and they go into the cave and they fall asleep for about 300 years. They wake up and Allah had protected them by doing that. So now the second story is about two gardeners. So the first gardener had a lot of wealth. He had two gardens. He had everything that you could imagine. The second gardener didn't really have that much at all. It's not even mentioned how much he really had in the Quran. So he used to talk down, the wealthy gardener used to talk down to the other gardener who had nothing, and Allah had taken everything away from him and flipped everything upside down for him, just because he was using his power that was given to him in an abusive way. Now, what's the reasoning, or what's the lesson that we could learn from the first story of Surah Kahf, where the three young men who fled from their city? Is that just because these men were young, they didn't have anything, they didn't have any resources, you don't underestimate them. They didn't have anything of this dunya, but Allah was on their side and had given them the strength and the discipline to get through it, and Allah was able to break the worldly dunya. So the first story is about where the three young men, and when they fled from the city, the lesson that you can learn from that is that just because you don't underestimate anyone who doesn't have the capabilities, if they're young, if they don't know what they're doing, right? Just because they have Allah on their side, you don't underestimate them. And people are saying, using the material while using this dunya. During the story, you could see that they didn't turn to anyone in this dunya, right? They had Allah on their side from the beginning. They didn't turn to anyone. They didn't turn to any person. The strongest person in their city was on them, right? They were getting attacked by them. But guess what? What they didn't have? They didn't have Allah, right? Allah had saved them. Materialism isn't about the money, the fame, and what comes with it, and it's about relying on this world. When you get into a tough situation, what you do is you turn to this world first before you turn to Allah. That's what materialism is. That's what materialism does to you. You look for scapegoats through this dunya. So now the other story is of the gardeners, is where the wealthy gardener talks down to the other gardener who didn't really have that much, right? Is that you don't overestimate what a person can do. This gardener was given everything by Allah. He abused it. He used and abused other people with it, like the other gardener, and talked down to him. And just like that, Allah had taken everything away from him. Just because Allah has given you something doesn't mean you have the right to abuse it. Allah has that right. He can take it away, as you can see through that story. Now, the second half of the surah goes of serum, story, serum. So, and these serums are talking about the day of judgment and what on the day of judgment, what's going to happen and how it's going to be. So the first surah is about Prophet Musa, where he makes 3 stops, and during those 3 stops, he's not allowed to say anything, right? He has to learn, like, he thought he was the most knowledgeable. So Allah had put him through a test and made him go with this old elder man, and he learned from him. And Allah showed him, like, no, you don't know everything. The other story is about Dhul Qarnayn, where he was also traveling the world, and each issue that had came up to him, in any injustice that had came up, he was able to resolve it. Now you have another story, linear, but 2 different opposite effects that are happening, right? Within these 2 stories, Allah is trying to show us, like with the Prophet Musa alayhi salam's story, is that sometimes you don't have the power to change anything. Even if you think so, you don't. And the other story of Dhul Qarnayn is you could have all the power in the world, and you can use it for the right reasons and make that impact, and have a huge impact on the world. Now, you may be asking, like, why is this important? Like, why am I even talking about this? And how can we relate it to our lives? So the way you can relate it to your life is when you have power, you need to understand when that power is given, like, you should not abuse it. You can look at the 2 stories, look at Dhul Qarnayn's story, right? He had power, he had the influence that he can make the right changes. But if you look at the second story that was talked about the gardeners, how one person abused his power, how Allah took away his power, and it flipped everything upside down on him, right? When the power is given to you, you must use it wisely. And throughout these stories, Allah is trying to show us, like, you should not rely on this dunya, because this dunya is a test. It's a test for us. It's a trap for us. We need to have Allah in our mind every single step of the way that we do, and it's called tawakkul, which I talked about previously in one of my previous lectures. Now, how does this relate to the Dajjal, you might be asking? And so when the Dajjal comes, he's going to be able to control this dunya. He's going to be controlling everything of this dunya. He's going to be able to make your dead, your relatives who passed away come back to life and make them look like they came back to life. He's going to make heaven look like hell and hell look like heaven, right? He's going to be able to do things that are unimaginable and look like God. And so he's going to be doing these crazy things that if we're already mesmerized by this world, by the crazy things that we're already doing in this world, imagine when the Dajjal comes and he's doing all these crazy things, growing things that we couldn't even imagine, doing things that, like, bring our dead loved ones back from the past, right? Like, if we're already mesmerized in this world, hypnotized in this world, imagine when he comes, how weak we're going to be, right? So Allah is trying to remind us, like, when you read the surah, it snaps you out of here. It says, listen, yeah, I put you on this world, but remember, don't forget why I put you on this world, right? This is a test for us, and every step of the test, we have to put Allah first. We have to remember Allah, because Allah is the one that's going to get us through this. Jazakallah for listening. Just as one reminder, just please, make it a habit. Try to read Surah Kahf every Friday if possible. If not, read the first 10 ayats and leave the last 10 ayats. It'll be very beneficial. Even if you slowly try to increase it as well, if you can make more time for it, because it's going to be a huge blessing for you if the time comes of the Dajjal comes during our lifetimes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
قل لو كان معه آلهة كما يقولون إذا لابتغوا إلى ذي العرش سبيلا سبحانه وتعالى عما يقولون علوا كبيرا.